ever, snow, I mean, just all kind of things are happening, and I'm starting to believe it's my fault. I'm really not sure. But I've been in law enforcement going on 29 years. I guess what got people always say, why'd you start in law enforcement? I watched bullying when I was in school. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I was born in Mississippi, so I'm a southern guy, but money was so bad when we were younger. Dad moved to Chicago, and that's where he worked, and we always wanted to come back south. So after I got done with college, I played baseball for a while. I quit playing baseball, I was about 22, and we came back home. But bullying always bothered me. I just had this, I wanted to serve and protect, and it sounds cliche, but it's true. I love to serve. I love to help people. And policing is really, really hard. It's a lot different than when I started in the early 90s. It's different, but great people like you make it worthwhile. I started in law enforcement. I was a patrolman, and I always had a career path for myself where I wanted to be. And as a patrolman, I became a detective where I worked violent crime. And then from there, I was a special operations team. I was a SWAT member for about 10 years in high-risk search warrants. My wife always told me, why do you do that? It's just a little crazy, I guess. But I did that for over 10 years. And then the U.S. Marshals recruited me, and I went with the U.S. Marshals for about a year and a half. And I worked fugitive crime, where we went out and tried to arrest the most wanted. And while I was doing that, the FBI recruited me, and I was, my department kind of put me on loan. So I went with the FBI for almost 6.5, 7 years, where I worked. You see Interpol on TV? I worked for Interpol for about a year. I was one of 12 officers selected in the United States, and I went to Interpol. And I traveled 5 countries working terrorism and violent crime. So when I got back, they re-recruited. I did that for almost a year. Then they re-recruited me, and I came back, and I was assigned to what they call the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And I worked terrorism in the United States for about, like I said, about 6 years. A lot of traveling. As my boys were getting older, started to be way on my wife. I have a fantastic wife. She's my blessing. We've been married 26 years, be 27 in October. She's something. And we have 2 boys, Jacob and Hunter. And as they got older, I didn't want to be away from home as much. So I was picked to be deputy chief, and I became a deputy chief. I had all ranks in the department. And I did that for about 7 years, and I was thinking about retiring. I was getting frustrated, you know, the way the things were changing, and I didn't feel like I was making a difference anymore. My wife told me, Allan, you need to pray about it. That's what you've always loved to do. So we prayed, and I came to visit my uncle, and I have some family here, and thinking about retiring. And my uncle, he said, if you ever get a chance, Siloam-Springs is one of the best kept secrets. I promise you, that's what he told me. He said, it's an unbelievable place. So I looked into Walmart, they recruited me a little bit, and I really wasn't ready to do that. And then the chief's opening came available, and I got a couple phone calls, so I applied. And, you know, I put it in God's hand, and it was tough because my son, Jacob, was a sophomore. So I had to move in the middle of his year. My other son's in college, and my wife supported me like she always did. She said, listen, if this is what you want to do, I'll support you. Guys, it's been a great move. This has been one of the warmest communities, most welcoming. But again, I feel like I've been that guy that it's just all these crazy things are happening. You know, we lost an officer to tragedy just a couple weeks ago, and it's been really, really hard on the department. And just your prayers, that's all we need, is your prayers and your support. Because law enforcement around the country right now is I can see it in my young guys' eyes. I've been through a lot. But I can see it in their eyes. It's just the things they see, the negative stuff on TV. Every time you defund the police, guys, there are bad police officers. There's guys that I don't want at our department. But there's good and bad in everything. Doctors misdiagnosed 150,000 people that died last year. 150,000. Do we quit using doctors? I mean, there's good and bad in everything. Every lawyers, bankers, there's good and bad in everything. And we've got to figure out some way to keep those bad officers out. And again, a lot of it's mental illness. You know, the officers see so much. Guys, I was on 500 dead bodies by my 7th year. 7th year, I had one car accident. I had 8 kids killed in one accident. the suicides and the officers. I was telling someone, it's a police roller coaster. We can do anything from walking kids, we'll cross a kid. See, I'm a walker, so I'm trying to stay in this thing. We can walk a child across to school, and then all of a sudden you're getting a burglary call, or you may get a burglary call, and then you're up on that roller coaster, and then a few minutes later, you're getting to talk to nice people, and it's down and up. But where I worked high crime pretty much 15 years of my career in terrorism. I've been in supervision for about 12 years. So I saw the worst of the worst. I worked housing projects, and you know, I had protests when I left home. I had one of my officers that had a good shoot, and I've never met a cop, and I have worked all over the country, in New York, Chicago. I've never met a cop that wants to kill somebody, that wants to pull his gun and shoot anybody. Never. But when it happens, you have a split second to make a decision. A little story I had. I was on we were doing a checkpoint one day. We had citizens' complaints were coming in that we're having a lot of drunk drivers and a lot of people under the influence. So what we were doing during the daytime, we're just stopping cars just to be seen doing driver's license checks. When you've been a cop as long as I can, when a car comes at you with people, you can tell if they've been drinking, if they're on drugs, you're just, you know. This young man's coming at me, and I could look at his eyes and he's under the influence of something. So I put my hand out, I said, hey, stop. And my partner's on the other side, well, he drives right by me. And so I kind of jog behind him and I say, you know, let me see your hands. And he puts his hand on his dash. The kid on the other side put his hand on the dash. I could smell alcohol come out. The kid in the back seat took his hand, he put it under his coat. He's probably 14 years old, 15. And I'm like, let me see your hands. And he's looking at me and he's getting aggressive. I pull my weapon, let me see your hands. Now I have to make a decision. I'm a white police officer in an all-black neighborhood. I have a black male in the back seat, and he will not show me his hands. I'm yelling at him, let me see your hands. And he goes, put your hands out like you got a gun pointed at me. Anybody. So you're me now, and I'm the kid. You got to make a decision. Let me see. Say, tell me, let me see your hands.
Let me see your hands.
He goes, bang, with his finger.
Oh.
With his finger. God's grace, I don't know how I didn't shoot that young boy, but I took him out of the car. He said, I'm just playing.
Oh.
Guys, until we teach our children what to do and what not to do, it starts at home. Police officers can't be everything for everybody. And that's the way things are slowly going. We're not doing the things we had at home. My dad had a saying, Allan, I brought you in this world, I'll take you out. And he meant it. So again, and so I go around, I talk to young groups, I tell that story because that could have defined my life with his finger. Now, who was going to believe me? Mm-hmm. Especially nowadays. Because you have split-second decisions. And guys, you ever see those little things that they're a button and you could stop it, and it's a beep? We don't have a stop button. We don't get to go home when things really get bad. We're at work. But what I want to do tonight is answer your questions. I want to talk about a little bit of what my leadership is, if you're interested in that.
Yeah.
When I came in here, I really stress teamwork. I stress customer service. You guys are our customers. We're here to protect and serve you. I've never had a cop go into a house, and I've had kids that burn up in houses. I've seen the worst of the worst child abuse cases you can think of. And it beats on you. But like I told you earlier, I've never seen any officers that ever asked, I'm not going to that house, what color is he? You know, am I going in that neighborhood? You hear a call, you go. We don't ever ask those questions, but again, so I tell you all these things to know your prayers matter, your comments matter, the things that support. I tell my guys all the time, listen, 90% of this country supports us. We see it, and this is the most loving community. I've never ate so much. I'm like 20 pounds heavier since I moved here. Every time, there's always food, and every time I come, hey, they're feeding us here, they're feeding there, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really mean it, and it means a lot to my guys and my girls. What a community. And again, every day, you know, I am blessed that God put me here. There was a reason. You know, we lost an officer a couple weeks ago. And it was tough because another story is when I was at Tupelo, I had an officer named Gail Stauffer, and I had an officer named Joseph Marr. I'd known Joseph since he was 13 years old. I talked him into coming to my junior police academy. I started in 1999. There were good kids that came and stayed at our academy for 2 weeks, and we sent them through a little academy of policemen. We've hired 8 officers since 1999 out of that group. Anyway, I've known Joseph, and he played football at Ole Miss, and just watched him. And I knew Gail because when I was a shift commander, he started me under as a rookie. And we were talking one day, and I had been deputy chief for like 2 weeks. And my job was to run daily operations. I had 160 employees, covered 62 square miles with 3 housing projects. So it was busy. And my chief that came in, we had worked together for years and years and years. And I was with the FBI and kind of wanted to stay, but he didn't really give me a choice. He said, "You're coming back and this is what you're doing." So I said, "Yes, sir," and that's what I did. But he was out having a knee replacement. I was talking to Gail that day, and it was December 2013, December 23rd. And Gail and I were just talking. He was fussing about shoplifters. We used to pick shoplifters up, and we didn't fill out affidavits. What we were trusting is when someone got shot, we were trusting Walmart was going to come and sign an affidavit. In 20 plus years, they never not showed up. He was concerned, what if that one time they don't come up? And then we are liable because we took somebody to jail without a warrant. And I said, "Gail, I'm with you. I've only been deputy chief 2 weeks. That's on my list." He said, I said, "You're always fun." We were joking back and forth, and he said, "I love you, Cap," because I was his captain for 4 years, and he hugs my neck. And then I said, "Hey," he said, "I got to go by Beth. It's because Christmas Eve was the next day." He said, "I've got to get the turkey." And I haven't been over to Jim's to get it yet, bless you. And Jim had to get the turkey because Jim always did turkeys for police officers, and so he was going over there. So I walk off the back, and Joseph's in the back, and he's talking to a guy in a Denver Broncos shirt. And learned from old coach one time, try not to interrupt people, so I had a habit. I put my hand on you, or I'll wink at you to let you know I'm thinking about you. I'm not ignoring you. So I touched Joseph. I gave him the wink, and he gave me a smile, and he continued to talk. Well, as I'm pulling out of the driveway, they come out with a bank robbery on Gloucester. So being a veteran guy, usually if there's any kind of bank robbery in the middle of town, they're going to go towards the highway. So I take a right. Joseph and I see everybody run out, and they take a left going to the scene. But usually when a call comes out, within 5 minutes they've left because the suspect's there, they get in the car. By the time the witness calls 911, 911 puts that information, it's 5-10 minutes. Well, I go down there, there's no traffic at all, none, and this is busy. So it must be a train. So I take a left to go to the train, and I can see the shootout between my officers and the suspect. He got held up by the train. And again, the call came out is there's a Hispanic male in a white SUV with big rims. So the officers, when they pull up, they see an SUV, Hispanic male, big rims, so they start doing a felony takedown. Let me see your hands. The bad guy was in a car that could have just drove away. As Joseph walked by, it's all on video, the suspect goes out and shoots Joseph in the back of the head. And then Gail turns around and shoots Gail. 10 minutes after I'm talking to my officers, I'm standing over him. Joseph, God's grace, and he is a miracle. He's had a child since. He was shot through the back of the head that came out here. He looks great, talks great. He says when I turkey hunt, he's got to hold his lip because he can't get his call to do too well anymore. He's got an unbelievable attitude. He goes around the country speaking. What I'm saying, our normal day can be so normal. And then in a split second, these officers have to make decisions. And I was Beth's escort at police. She asked me, I was humbled. I went to Washington, D.C. and watched his name be put on the wall. And now Beth goes around and talks about officers. So I tell you that to know I know about tragedy. I've been there. I had my FTO when I was a young, not knowing anything, and Jim trained me. And Jim decided to retire after 31 years, and they talked him into coming back part-time and got shot by a policeman's kid going to a domestic violence just to go and check on his guys. Shot him through the door. So it's that roller coaster, guys. We were talking to somebody, maybe it was you. What's a bad person look like? I've been doing this going on 30 years. I don't know. I've had anywhere from a 10-year-old kid pull a gun out on me to, what's the oldest? And I've had, I think, a 74-year-old elderly lady with mental problems pull a gun on me, or a knife. So what's a bad person look like? So I'll tell you all that. Just when you see things on TV, ask me, and I'll try to explain it. You know, all these policemen, they just run red lights because they're late going to get donuts or lunch. No, laws prohibit us to run code to certain things. So we're trying to get there in a rush as quick as we can. So we try to bump the lights through red lights, and we try to get there sometimes. My leadership style, is there any questions about that? And I don't tell you to sadden you, I'm just trying to tell you things to help you understand what an officer sees and what they go through. Leadership, so I've had some really good leaders, and I've had some really bad ones. I've had guys that didn't support me and just played politics. I'm not a politician. I care about the community, and I care about my people. And if my people are right, Mr. Coleman's heard me, they'll fire me first. Because it is hard to do this job. Now, I tell my guys all the time, just be honest with me and tell me the truth, and then we'll work through it. But again, you guys are blessed. I'm blessed to have the department we have. But I used to be kind of more of a militaristic leader, because that's how I was. Military guys and backgrounds, everything was, sir, I need you to do that, go watch that door. Yes, sir, and I carry on, that's what I did. If you got in trouble, they yelled at you all the time. And I never took it like that. I just, hey, he's just having a bad day, and that's just the way it is. That's the way I was brought up. And as I got older, I found out my guys did more when they knew you cared about them. And you're dealing with different groups of people. So as I transformed about my 10th year, and I was always I just didn't want my people to do all the work. I didn't mind getting there to do the work with them. You know, whatever they needed to do, I think I want to work side by side. So so I would say my leadership now is transformational. I want to build for the future. I never want Siloam to hire a guy like me again. I don't mean that bad. I just think we have quality people here that just haven't been trained, and my job is to train them so the next time they need a chief, we got one right here. And people like when you first got here, oh, you're going to bring all your command staff from all these places, you know. I brought one guy, and every one of you are going to smile when I say his name. I brought one guy from Tupelo with me because we're going to start a motorcycle unit in about a month. You'll see them out. Yeah, I think you'll like it. The community will like it. Their primary focus will be accidents and things like that. But his name's James Bond. his phone number, you'll never forget, is 0007. And so yeah, but he's a great guy. But we have such quality officers here. It's phenomenal. We're required to do anywhere from 26 to 30 hours of training. The officers that I have average between 100 and 200 hours of training each. So we're trying to train them to handle situations and deal with people, because when I started, my job was to arrest bad people and enforce the law. And now we're doctors, we're psychiatrists, we're firemen, we're a little bit of everything. We wear so many different hats, and it's a lot different. And we don't mind wearing hats because we're usually first on scene where we're dealing with people, and you're seeing them at their worst. I mean, it's not like. And that's what's neat about being here. I see a lot of people at their best, and it's great. I'm not always just going to a terrible call. People, you guys care, and if I brag on this community too much, I'm sorry, but it's been a blessing to my family. You guys have been great. Ask me a couple of questions. Anything about law enforcement? You won't hurt my feelings, good or bad.
Okay, so I deal a lot with people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of training are you doing with do you do training? Because sometimes there's a difference in a druggie and someone who has a mental disability, or someone with autism or something like that.
Right, the big push came out a few years ago, and I know in the last couple of, the state mandates us to do so many hours of training. I think it's 8, but I try to do about 30 hours of dealing with the mentally ill. Because again, when you're going out there, we can't tell if that person's on PCP or they're on crack, or they're a war veteran that's come back, or somebody just having a really hard time. I've been really proud on how my officers do that. I had someone was telling me this morning, they were out front, a couple of my guys had to deal with it over there 2 hours, and it's patience. The last thing we want to do is take people to jail. That's not what we sign up for, is take people to jail. But one of the things we have to do, we have to enforce the law. I tell my young son all the time, and then my older son, well, they're just out there writing. I said, son, what if there wasn't laws? Could you imagine the chaos? No speed limits. Let's just let everybody do 80 miles an hour. Because it's crazy enough, since I've been here, everybody runs red lights. So that's been my big focus, trying to slow these truckers coming through town. But again, we have to have laws, and there has to be people there to enforce those laws the right way. And again, because I had to learn a long time ago, when you go into a man or woman's house, that's their castle. So you got to treat them with respect when you go in that house. But there's a reason we're at that house. Someone called us. So a lot of times when we're there, it's hard, and you have to make those decisions. And a lot of times the laws don't give us, like, domestic violence. Back in the day, it used to be our decision to take someone to jail on domestic violence. Now the law says you shall. So if we go and we used to let them go in two different ways, but what started happening is the husband or wife was, oh, we're fine, we're gonna be good, and we make the husband leave. Well, then he left, and he comes back and hurts her, or she does him. So now the law doesn't give us a choice, so someone has to go to jail, and give them that time away from each other. But great questions. That kind of help you, but we do a lot of training dealing with not so much disabled, but dealing with more of the mentally ill.
Because we hear a lot of that in the news. They'll say, shot because, and they'll say, well, they were mentally ill. And that seems to be sent, but the police officer is in the same situation with a mentally ill person as someone who's not, because you don't, like you said, you don't know.
Right. And what we're seeing a lot more of since, you've Afghanistan and Iraq and everything like that, we're starting to get more war veterans come back, PTSD. And again, one of the big things that I want to fight for, and I want to get with our legislators here, is noticing the mentally ill with our officers. Because I know a lot of officers got PTSD. I mean, guys, I'm telling you, I told you earlier how many dead bodies. Because with me, we had to go on everybody if it was natural causes or anything at the house, we still had to go. And it piles up, so you're seeing suicides and things all the time. And think about having a job where a lot of places I worked, they didn't like you. They didn't want you there. And so now, what I saw the other day, in the last 2 years, 518 officers have died in the line of duty. 518. You know how many firemen that have died in the line of duty in the last 2 years? 9. Everybody, and that's what I tell my fireman friends. I'll keep crying her all the time. I said, "You guys are so, everybody loves you. You get, your flags, and again, because they don't have to enforce the law. They don't have to hold people accountable. It's kind of like the principle I was telling you earlier. We've been taught all our lives to obey our parents, to obey the principal, obey the teachers, your grandparents. That's the problem, guys, and I may not be popular with this, but all these incidents going around the country, if everybody did what they were told to do, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. Even if the orders, or even if some of the commands weren't lawful, just do it, you'll have your day in court, because, hey, I'll sit on the jury. Bad cops, we don't have a place for them. They don't need to be in it. And it's a terrible thing, but we have to teach our kids to obey. Just like my kids, I tell them, if you're stopped, turn your interior lights on, show them your hands. But I tell them, hey, if he asks you to search your car, tell him no. You don't have to. Tell them all the time, young people. But again, just, don't show them you're nervous, because it's hard. I've walked up on a car one night in Haven Acres, and God's grace again, I caught a glimpse of something silver, and he was waiting for me to walk up in the doorway. He had a Derringer with 410 slugs in it, and he was just waiting on me to approach the vehicle, and he was gonna try to shoot me. And I've had a lot of bad, so I can tell you all kinds of stories, but again, we got more questions?
I have a question. I work right up on 412, and I'd say in the last 2 or 3 years, we've just had a huge influx of homeless people and a lot of theft and everything. And 2 of the guys we've asked, since they were sitting outside our door, where are you from? One of them said that he came on a bus from Fort Smith and was brought here, And another one said that they came on a Greyhound bus from Oregon and were
Right.
brought here. And could just speak to that.
I know New Yorkers were given bus tickets and plane
Yeah,
tickets
they
to go
said
to
they
other
got bus
states.
tickets, yeah. And I'm just wondering, I think that's happening more and more, and what's your opinion of,
It is. I've seen a lot more homeless. We've actually, our city manager, Philip, he's really
Yeah.
supportive of our department in our city.
Yeah.
And we talk about that. We don't really have a Salvation Army here, because, I was asking, I was getting calls, because if someone is on your church ground, I can't come in and arrest them for trespassing. You have to sign an affidavit for trespassing. We, give them a warning, hey, don't be here, they don't want you here, if I come back, you're gonna have to go somewhere. But we don't have a vagrancy law here, or ordinance, so there's not a lot we can do. And as I was coming here, I seen a couple, they've been down at Walmart, right across from Zaxby's, been there pretty much all day. And when I was pulling in your driveway, they were just pulling their shopping cart down. It was a male and a female. But it's really careful, because it's like cops, you got some that make us look bad, same thing with homeless. The people that need help, we wanna help them. But I've also seen the ones that say they need help and they got a Mercedes-Benz pulled around them.
yeah,
We wanna help them. So we're trying to come up with solutions, because we notice our homeless. It's probably getting our churches more involved, is what I've told. I gave my opinion. We've gotta
Yeah.
get churches. We had churches back home would actually, would feed them on different churches would feed them, or they would come in and sponsor. You have one home church, other churches would come in, and we would feed them meals, in the day. And then we had some care workers that would try to find them relatives. Because there's some folks that, I worked with one homeless guy, he was a pretty nice guy till he got drinking, but he was getting a check every month. But again, that's the life he chose. So it's trying to find, we have to come together as a community to try to figure out. Police can't figure it out, because we don't have a lot of avenues. We gotta pick up the phone, hey, you have any places, you have beds for these folks, do you have, especially when it got cold like it did last week. And some people really need help. They got in this situation somehow. I know of a professor that I knew from college, he just got hooked on drugs really bad and lost everything. And I got a call one day and I actually taught a class that I was in. And I got called to he had a stolen lawnmower or a leaf blower or something at a local pawn shop, and I come in and he saw me, took off running. I barely recognized him, because he was just so skinny, and just until I got him, and I'm like, I talked to him, and he just got hooked on drugs so bad he lost everything. And it's sad. But as a community, we had groups where we would get together, we would try to decide what to do as a community. And that's right now, but we have a big influx, I've noticed that. But it is a problem that we talk about, Mr. Coleman knows, we talk about these types of things, trying to figure out what can we do with them. But great, could that kind of answer?
yeah. I just was wondering, I guess there's no ramifications for states and cities that gather up a lot of people and drive them and drop them off in someone else's town.
I've seen it.
Oh, I know it happens, but there's probably no way to
Yeah,
get
how
them
do you
to
hold
stop.
people accountable?
Yeah, you
A
can't
lot
hold
of
them
times,
accountable.
hey, I'm just trying to get to this state line, so you get them, or I'm trying to get to, if you just give me a ride, I won't come back, so you drive them to Fayetteville, and then the next day they're right back in town. So, and you'll see some pick them up in the car, and they'll drive to different jurisdictions, because they'll ask. I've had ones that I went to bat for, and all the officers chipped in bus money to try to get him. And we bought him a bus ticket, we gave him the bus ticket, and the next day he sold the bus ticket, and he's right back out on the street again. So then we wanna help him, but then, when I saw him, he's out there drinking alcohol and smoking a cigarette from the money that we try to give him help. That's why, like, a lot of times is getting centers where they could come in and they could get some counselors to talk to them to really find what that problem is. Again, because a lot of times when they see us, they see the badge and the gun. So a lot of times you won't sell. I wear a uniform a lot, but I don't wear as much as I used to. And it started when I was SRO. I started one of Mississippi's first policemen in schools in 1999. And I learned that a lot of my kids that I dealt with from different areas were scared when I walked in the room, because it drove me nuts. I'd walk up to a car for a stop, and the parent would say, you better be quiet, he's gonna get you, he's gonna take you to jail, and instantly makes that kid scared of the police. So my guys started wearing a soft uniform, because I wanna be approachable. I want you to be able to approach, because some of you might have bad stories that you've had from officers that were rude, or, you know, and hopefully you've had a lot of good stories, but they're out there, guys. I'll never forget my oldest son, his very first time ever stopped by a policeman. He was stopped by a reserve officer. I knew where he was at. My son would rather hunt and fish than breathe, and he wanted to go down to the river, and he was bow fishing. So I called him, hey buddy, you're running late. Dad, can I stay till 10 o'clock? We're on some fish. And I'm like, okay. So being the dad I am, my son's telling me the truth. I drove there and I saw his car where we were supposed to be, so we were good. So about 10:10, he comes by, and I could see tears in his eyes, and he went upstairs. So Mom went up and figured out, I said, everything okay? He's like, you need to talk to him. Go upstairs, and trying to get home before I told him to be home at 10. He was running late. He was afraid he was gonna get in trouble. So he decided to do a U-turn with his fishing boat on the back. And the officer should have gave him a ticket, but the officer just dressed him down. I mean, talked to him really, really ugly. To this day, if a policeman stops my son, he shakes. It scared him so, because that guy said some really, really bad things to him. And that's the kind of guys we don't need. I mean, you're dealing with a 16-year-old kid. This is his first time, and he'll never forget. He's 22 now. So what we do matters. What we say matters, because it's that first contact. So that's one of our big issues across the country now. That in New York, I was in Hawaii. Yes, they sent me. I was a Crime Stoppers. I got involved in Crime Stoppers too. I was the coordinator over that for about 6 years, and their conference was in Hawaii, and they're like, do you want to go? I'm like, do I have to? And so we went out there, but their homeless population is crazy, because New York gave them, what I was being told by the chief there, they were being given plane tickets and stuff to be in a warmer climate. So are we really solving the problem, or are we dumping it on somebody else? So as a community, we got to get together and try to figure out what we can do with these folks. Because a lot of the ones that we need help, and we're trying to, but we don't have the resources at the police department.
So what do you need from us? What do you need from us as a community then? What do we do to help?
The big thing with me is getting out and get to know you. Like, that's been the problem since I've been here. I started January 6th of 2020, and COVID hit like 3 months later in March. So I haven't been able to get a lot of things to really see what's going on. You guys are doing a lot. It's just getting together as a community, trying to find resources for these people, where I could go to them and I could give them a card and say, hey, this church on this day is going to be doing this. They've got a group together that will help you get money where you need to go. You just don't want to give them money, or it'll happen exactly what I told you. They'll be trading a bus ticket or something in like that. But what we do is do counseling sessions, try to keep up. The officers will get the information. Like, there was one young man, he was a black guy. He was staying, you might have saw him at Walmart. It's over the summer. He actually started getting a mattress, sleeping behind the AT&T store. Once he's back there night for night, we know he's definitely homeless. So we try to get him help, and we try to get together, and he was trying to get back to home in Oklahoma. So we found a way to try to help him get there. You see a lot of folks that are coming through and they got signs up, but again, I would rather the money go through a church or an organization where we know where they really need help than what I was telling you earlier, where they're doing that, then they go around, they're driving a nicer car than we are. Because again, we're in a country that people are givers, and they give a lot. So they stand out there all day, you know, for a few hours. They may make $200-300. That's not bad 5 days a week. So again, it's finding those folks, but it's getting together, getting the churches behind, starting an organization. You guys, and I'll be glad to send officers to it. Support trying, because I know of at least 6 to 7 homeless people we have in the city right now. Because I just had a command staff meeting about it. Because what do we do with them? But we don't have a lot of resources. Where to send them? We're talking about warming centers right now. That's one of the things right now we're going around. But again, that would be easier. My suggestion was a church or something like that, because something like this, you can actually have beds when you have you know, a gymnasium or something like that. I don't have the resources at a police department. With the business and everything going on every day, it's really hard. But it's gonna take community involvement to help with that. Do you have a question?
Do you get to talk to kids in the schools much here?
Ma'am?
Do you get to talk to kids in the schools, get to speak to groups or anything?
That's one of my big things. I love to speak and I love to go, I've always loved it. And, but ever since I've been here, COVID's been here, so we have these rules. It feels good not to have a mask on, but it's hard to get in the classroom right now. My son has been here and it's been really hard on him. He's a pretty good baseball player. He comes from a school that it's hard to get his family left. They've won 9 championships in like 20 years, state championships. And we come here and he starts meeting people, then baseball season starts and 8 games in, the season's canceled. So now he's probably been home more his junior year than we've been at school. You know, he was just out for almost 2 straight weeks. So again, it's nobody's fault, it's just the way it is, but I'm not having the opportunities to get in there. Now I have a great SRO group. I'd like to see that group grow. One of my big pushes right now with the city is, to be honest, I have 40 officers. I need more. So we have a plan right now to, if the budget keeps going well and tax revenue and everything like that keeps going at a good rate, we're gonna try to add 10 officers over the next 5 years. Because again, it's just so hard when we're spread out. You got City Park, you got Kayak Park, and there's so much. The big problem we have right now, like I have a jail in back, and I don't want a full-time jail. It's too much liability, too much headaches, but what I want is a holding facility where during the day, because if I have 6 officers on the street, I have 6, I went to school, 6. When you have 6 officers, and then all of a sudden they go and they have an arrest, and they arrest 2 people, they have to transport, those 2 officers are out of pocket for about 2.5 hours by the time they drove to Bentonville and they drive back to do paperwork. So that gives me 3, and if I have 1 sick, and then I have 1 on vacation, I have 2 officers. Now I have staff here, but it makes it really hard to give the coverage. If you guys have noticed, since I've been chief, one of the big pushes I've had is more police presence. So you've probably seen a lot more cars because everybody leadership's different. I believe in, like I told you when I started customer service, I want people to visually see officers in cars. Has anybody seen more cars? I try to, because people are spread all over, so I try to put more cars. We did an Operation Safe Summer this year because they haven't worked narcotics like they should here. And they had a great year because, again, when you don't see police present, what happens? You start to see more crime because we're not watching. So the same thing when you're not working drugs, they start trickling in and they somehow find to our kids. So I'm big on keeping that out of our city. I want to keep the city great. We've got a great community, but again, we got to be hard on crime. We can't be easy on it. You got to keep it out here. You got to keep it away from our kids. I'm a little bit older. I come from a generation where you could leave a $100 bill on your dashboard unlocked, and if you came back that day, it was going to be there. If it blew out of the car, someone was going to find you and give it to you. I had an older guy one night. I'll never forget. I went to Kroger, and I knew him. It was Mr. Lindley. Hey, Mr. Lindley, what are you doing? Oh, someone broke my window out. I said, you have anything in there? And he said, well, the only thing they stole was my Bible. I'll never forget. I said, Mr. Lindley, he said, you know what? If it helps save him, I guess it was worth it. But that was his attitude. But again, people will break into stuff. So now we live in a time where we got to keep doors locked and do things like that. But we still have, like I said, this is a really good secret over here. We don't even tell too many people about it. Any other questions? I get long-winded. They told me I speak in 3 hours. I want to wrap. I don't want to be too long.
It's about 10 till, yeah.
Okay, I'll start wrapping up. Any other questions, guys? And again, I get
have
on
a question for you.
Sure.
We talked earlier, a long time ago, about neighborhood watch groups.
Mm-hmm.
So neighbors getting together and having updates from the policeman, maybe once a quarter, and watching out for crime and stuff like that. Is that going to go here in Siloam? Is that a possibility?
We're talking about it. Again, it takes a buy-in from the community. We had neighborhood watches, and what we did, broke up in areas. Like I had 1 through 10. In those sections, my city was 62 square miles. Each one was anywhere from 8 to 9 miles, but that one officer stayed in that area. So we got to know the people really well. And those, who knows more about what's going on in their area is the community. You guys see what's going on, you see who's stopping, you see who's doing things. So that you come and having meetings and we can give you, like if you're in Ward 3, I can have an officer that works that ward and I could come over and say, hey, you've had this many police reports, we've wrote this many tickets, and it kind of lets you know what's going on in your area. Then you can give us feedback on what we could do. So that's something I am looking at if the community's interested. We're blessed here, I'm afraid to say this, our crime rate is pretty good. You know, we're staying on top of it, staying busy, but you gotta stay on top of it. So it's trying to see what the community wants, and it's me getting out with groups like this to find out what you need as chief. And it's just me getting out again. The last few months we've all had COVID, and I think everybody's ready to get out of the house a little bit. So it's just getting out and meeting people to see what the needs of the community are. Anything else? Guys, anytime you need us, I can have detectives come and give you statistics and everything that we do. I just kind of wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. But I love what I do. I think I got a few more years in me. I'm gonna try really hard. But I think God put me in a place and a calling, and this is it. I told you the story about my officers that died. I've been through some really bad things, and I had told Brenda, I said, I don't know if I'm doing good. And when we lost our officer last week, she said, that's why God put you there to take care of these young guys. Because I've seen things like that. And we're gonna come back stronger. It's really hard, but that's my big push right now is mentally, you know, getting something on the books to understand the mental health issues with officers. Because I got a bill passed called the Stauffer-Marr bill. That's the 2 officers I told you about. In Mississippi, if an officer was hurt in the line of duty, if you came to me and you were my officer and you've been there for a year, you get a sick day a month, you would have 12 sick days. So let's say your first year you go and you're shot in the line of duty, and you're gonna be in surgery probably a year or 2, or even 6 months. You would have to live off 68% of your, from workman's comp, because after your sick time wore out, you didn't get any money. So I fought really hard back home to say, this ain't fair. They gave their life so they wrote anything that is a catastrophic injury, they get 100%. It's just like here, officer suicide, things like that. They're not recognizing for officers. I'm telling you, when you do this job, some guys, we're just so tough, and we're not gonna talk to anybody until it's too late. So trust me, when I tell you kind words or that support, it means a lot to them. It means a lot to me. It's why I'm still doing it after all these years. But thank you for having me. God bless you.
Could you wrap up by telling us what kind of volunteers you might be able to use? Perhaps a counselor, a counseling staff, volunteering to help with?
I hate to keep using an excuse. We talk about volunteer programs all the time. I had citizens on patrol at one time where folks just came out and rode with the officers to see what's going on in your neighborhoods. There's several programs I want to look at, but again, it's just been, I haven't had that chance. My first 6 months was about evaluation, and now it's coming in to see what our community, you guys tell me, what as a community, and I'm sorry I'm being long,
Okay.
what do you guys need more from your police department? Be honest with me, you won't hurt my feelings. I've been talked too bad before. Is there things that you need as a group? What do you see? Are you not seeing enough police officers? Or are you seeing a lot of drug activity? You're seeing a lot of speeders. I know they run these red lights, and when you see the motorcycles, I think you're really gonna like them. That's gonna be the kids love it. That's a good way to build rapport with them.
Are you gonna have a bicycle group?
We have a bicycle. We have a bike unit. Simmons has been absolutely awesome to us since we've been here. They're actually gonna donate us a side-by-side. We're gonna put lights and sirens and things on it. That way, when we get out to these parks, the kayak park, it's so hard to walk and get people help. We'll have the equipment we need in there to render help and support the fire department, because we got a great fire department too. But just things like that are being more visible. That's one of the things with the kayak park. I'm working with the county trying to get some, we're working out, see our officers, when they leave Siloam to go to the kayak park, we're out of jurisdiction for about 5 miles. So it makes it a little bit hard. And we can force the laws, but it's just, you got a liability, you gotta be crazy. So I'm working out something with the county, you know, hopefully, and I got it in, don't hold against my uncle's actually, he was the sheriff for a while, now he's the chief deputy over there. So he's a real good guy, and he loves us, he's the one who taught me to move in here. So again, have a pretty good end. Anything else?
I think just communicating with us, like you're doing that tonight.
I'm sorry?
Just communicating with us helps us too. We just don't know the needs, don't know how they fit in. I know you and I had a chance to visit back in October, November, and you just really appreciate you engaging our community.
I'm big, if you need me, any kind of groups, because I was big about doing that back home. We also started an advisory board. I wrote the advisory board back at home where you guys didn't have subpoena powers, but I met with an advisory board, and there were 8 of them. There was a member from each ward, and I would meet as a police department every second Wednesday of the month, and I would go over statistics that we were going on in the city, and if you had issues, you would come and talk to me about it. So I'm big on communication. Thank you for that. It is, again, us talking. It's us communicating what's going on in these neighborhoods.
We want to thank you very much.
The one that can't even ever make it.
Yeah, well, we got a big sack for you to put them in, so you look like Santa Claus.
Okay.
When you leave. Yeah, thank you so
All
much.
right, don't. Someone sit over here. You guys still got. Probably take up all the time.
When are we gonna present you with the,
But
If you do that, I'll get out of your hair.
when are we going to make the presentation?
we did the picture before, so we can present in front of the camera. Let's get the camera over here. Yep. Oh, I can see, no, now it's not pointing, now it is. All right, so.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Kids will love that, I promise. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I was making a couple bears, not a whole basket.
There is a big black sack there for you to put them in.
Yeah, there he's got it.